would like to warmly welcome Kim and Ditte. I'm going to introduce Kim and then Kim's going to introduce Ditte. As you all know, Kim is a much loved occupational therapist. She's also a speaker, a teacher, and a best-selling author. And she has an actively supporting function and healing role in many cultures. She has over 37 years of experience as an OT, and her passion includes complex behaviors, mental health, attachment, sensory processing, and trauma-informed practice. She's known for blending cutting-edge developments in neuroscience with the art of compassionate inquiry. So in 2019, Kim was honoured to be the recipient of the Award of Merit from the Canadian Association of Occupational Therapists. Well done. Kim is a Canadian therapist, and her mission is to support the conscious evolution of the human spirit. So welcome, Kim. If you want to just unmute yourself, and you're good to go.
Thank you. This idea of a wise table is very exciting, and it's deeply honoring. When Mindy said to me, Kim, if you could have your wish of who would you love to spend time having a conversation with about your passion, who would it be? And for me, there was not a breath in the space of time in my choice. And so to have the opportunity to have this conversation with someone that I hold in deep, highest regard is making me very anxious and humbled this morning. So I want to introduce to you Ditte Marcher, who is an incredible human being. That's the beginning. And what I love about listening to her is how she pulls you in to the depth of the human spirit. And when I listen to her speak, I sit there with my jaw open, with my mind open, and with my heart deeply affected. So that is my experience of her. But now I want to tell you who she is. She is the founder of the Bodynamic International Trauma Division. And my deepest passion is in the field of trauma, mental health, and attachment. And my interest is in the body. And so this is what brought me to Bodynamic International. For 11 years, she was the CEO of Bodynamic International. That in of itself is an amazing achievement, given the holding together of a foundation for that period of time. And she currently sits on the board of directors. She has worked in 25 different war zones, supporting adults, children who have experienced trauma, and those with developmental disabilities as well. So when I think about this amazing life, one of the things that she brings to the conversation that I believe is how we grow from trauma, not how we get stuck in trauma. So good morning and welcome, good evening and welcome to you, Ditte.
Now, thank you. Thank you very much. Now I got a little shy.
I am feeling the same way, which, you know, if you and I were sitting having coffee, it might not feel so. But it is just, I want to pretend that's what's happening. I feel when I want to also let the group know that you are in Greece this evening.
Yes, yes. And on Saturday, we start a 2 weeks lockdown here. And Greece is the home I spent the most time in this country. So yeah, I'm in Greece. And I'm in Greece with my 19 dogs. So if someone barks behind on another floor, it's the dogs.
Amazing.
Yeah.
My first question to you is, first of all, I want to give some context to the question. many people in this group, me included, care deeply about movement and how movement contributes to how we live in the world. And what I love about Bodynamics is it looks at movement from a social emotional perspective. How we use the movement system in relationships. How we use, so please jump in and speak about that.
Well, I have always said, the world do not come to you, it's us who has to come to the world. Literally, we are coming to the world. And that is something that continue in our development, that we have to move towards the world to be here, and we cannot do that without muscles. So we need deeply our movement and our muscles to be able to be in this world. We need them to be able to create good attachment. We needed to be able to create good connection, and we needed to be able to sustain good contact. So one of the ways looking at this is looking at the motoric development in children, or in us when we were children. In different age, different muscles becomes functional through our cognition. And that means I can choose to make a movement. It's not just a reflex, but it's a conscious movement. And at the same time, we are learning to use the movement in the body. You have another line going where we are going out to connect, to be in contact, to be met, and to try to create as much mutual connection without losing our dignity as possible. And when these two things meeting, so the parents or the school or the society and the movement, then something happened here, because if I am not met in a good way, my movement, my muscle will keep the memory of the connection I get. And that goes all the way down from even before I'm born.
There are two words that you use all the time that are deeply important to the understanding, I think, of Bodynamic, that I would love a deeper dive into. And one is the word contact, and the second is dignity, because those are key foundational words in the thought process. And it may seem weird to define those words, but could you help us with that?
Yeah. So when we believe in Bodynamic that the biggest drive in the human being is mutuality, connection, without losing our individuality, where the dignity grows, the sense of inner worth, and that we constantly through our life trying to balance these two themes. So sometimes we're selling out of dignity, of the fear of losing the connection with others or our parents. And sometimes we are selling out of mutuality to try to hold our own dignity. And dignity is a physical thing through the body. It goes through your whole body. And mutuality is also a physical thing. You know, we are reaching out, we are taking in, we take in with the eyes, we take in with the breathing, from very, very little. As soon as you're born, you know, attachment is not just something the mother do, it's something the child is very active in doing. It's a meeting. And how can I attach and at the same time sense that I preserve my own part of individuality? And even a little baby is born with a body ego. And, you know, even Freud wrote about the body ego. So we come into this world already with a sense of an individuality. And that individuality slowly grows when we develop more ability in our ego states, from body ego to individual ego to our role ego, observant ego, even the integrated ego that comes in between teenager and adulthood, where we are trying to figure out how to gather all these different kind of identity into the personality you or me will call, this is how I am. And in all that, have our defenses and our coding system. And what we are trying, really are trying to defend ourselves is the balance of the right to be me, the right to my dignity, and still the right to connect and be in contact with others.
I think
Good explanation?
that you captured the entire concepts in 5 minutes. Magnificent. Immediately, I had two parallel thoughts. One was, when we work with, many of us on this call today, work with kids with neurodiverse brains that are wired differently, who experience, we think, their body ego differently, perhaps, who have skin that doesn't always differentiate them from the world, or differentiates them from the world sensitively. And what we hope in our work is to help parents be more connected and in contact with the child that they have, so that they can begin to interpret, understand, translate the communication that their child is bringing through their body systems, and respond in keeping the child's dignity in their neurodiversity. And this is often hard to do because so many families globally, in my experience, want their neurodiverse child to be typical in their behavior, in their wiring, right? Yep. I didn't even want to use that word normal.
Whatever that is, you know. Yeah.
And how trauma, or if I use the word trauma there, how that lack of goodness of fit can be what I interpret through the Bodynamic thought process as a disturbance to that child's sense of who they are.
Yes, and for me, there is a huge range of wonderful humans. And I have always said, why are we so busy making everybody fitting into just one box? That's going to create a very boring life. Why are we not looking at very early, even way more early than we do today, to see what child am I sitting with, and how can I support this child to grow into his or her totally uniqueness? Because there is so many qualities we are throwing out by trying to regulate people to be in a specific box. And we are not seeing all the qualities that we have when we are wired differently. Now, I am wired differently. I'm very, very dyslexic. So I can read today, but I cannot write at all. Well, I can, but you cannot read what I write. And I cannot even read what I write. So that also means I had to learn things in a different way. I had to experiment things in a different way. And I had to be creative in a different ways. It gave me tremendous resources because I was lucky to be in a family who did not make it a problem. But they, you know, like my mother always said, don't worry, if you cannot write, you just get a secretary. I have that today. I have one of my sons who's not only dyslexic, he's also an Asperger, and that's not a secret. He says it himself, but he's also the CEO of the company. And I knew he was different he was born too early. He had a problem with his heart. I took him home from the hospital, I just knew he needs to be met. He needs to be touched. He needs to move and learn to move and a different way because he's wired different. And we have a fantastic brain. When we are not able to do something, we open a whole new pathways of ability that we are able to do. But if we only focus on that the kids has to do the same thing, we deny the beautiful pathway they have, and we don't, instead of encourage those qualities and create a space for them in the world. And you have seen Hattie, and Hattie is one big heart. You know? And nobody, I never met anybody who don't want to even own him. In Canada, the First Nation, I hope you call them the First Nation. Okay, they were like adopting him. We went to Hawaii, the Hawaiian was adopting him. I went to Japan with him, the Japanese, everybody wants him to be, oh, you are Japanese, or you are Hawaiian, or you are First Nation. They wanted him in.
Because they see his heart and the contact that he makes from the heart.
Yes.
I think.
And he's sensing you 6 meters away, you know? The rest of us, I need to be judged, but he can already sense you the moment you get in the door. That's a quality that should be respected and honored and even supported to grow.
Yes. I mean, those of you on this call who know me, you know why I love this conversation, because, you know, our mission at Relationship Matters is to support the conscious evolution of the human spirit. And this is in such alignment with that thinking. One of the challenges, and I'm curious if this is a challenge in the bodynamic thinking as well, is in our learning processes, which are so heavily driven by evidence. I'm going to use that word, and by science. We often are always looking to compare and to fix. So there is this split. I think people split, and maybe they don't have to. Acceptance, acknowledgement, be with, contact, meet with, you've got to be better, you've got to be more functional, we've got to meet these goals. There's this seesaw involved in our work. And I think that many therapists feel like they have to dance either or rather than find a way to come to the middle. So I'm curious about how that feels, what I've said, for you.
Well, you know, now I worked in a lot of war areas, and if you look out at the world, the whole world have this dilemma. You know, it's black or white. People don't know how to live in colors. It's right and wrong. People don't know how to make compromise. You know, doing conflict resolution. Most wars most traumas is about a lack of ability to make compromise.
Yes.
It becomes my way or the highway, the right way or the wrong way. And when we are more busy in being right, we lose the contact. We lose the ability to see each other. We lose the ability to meet each other. We lose the ability to be curious into each other, because we already comes with a prediction that I know what's the right way is here, and therefore everyone has to go this way. So we are not really good at living in the colors. And I think anyone who looks at the world today, it's clear that it's more polarized than ever for a long time. And there is not a willingness to say, whoa, what about meeting in the middle? What about compromising? What about changing normal to be new? That's a dangerous word, saying now new normal. But what about moving the bars so we can be greater instead of being smaller? Mm. We as human beings have endless potential. We are amazing. And we are wasting it on being so busy being right and having so little interest in connection.
Yeah.
So we often talk about connection. There's a lot of talk of connection, but when you look out, there's very little practice behind the talk saying, so let's connect. How willing are you for connection? You know, I always say, I don't care about being right. It's more important to be connected, because through the connectedness, we can make compromise and we can grow.
Yes. One of the most powerful learnings that I had from you was when I was in Hong Kong several years ago already now, with my daughter in your class. And there was a demo that was a game changer for me. And it was about making contact. And one of the most powerful shifts was anger in the body and in the emotion is contact. Yes. And this was a powerful reframe for me, because I had to embody that, to be the recipient of anger, but also to be able to express anger and feel that in my physical self and be met in that space, both by the receiver and as the receiver. And I would say for me, that was one of the most transformative experiences, because I learned how to use my legs, how to use my feet, how to use my shoulders, how to use my breath to stay in contact during a feeling of fear. And this is the depth of the information that I think children have wired into them, but they lose it when they are not able to express their emotions. So I wanted to ask if you could take us in that path around how do we learn to we use this word self-regulation all the time. How do we learn to be connected to our emotions in the body as a child?
First of all, if you want to teach kids to be in contact with emotion, you have to start telling them that all the basic emotion, that by the way is a combination of our chemistry are good. There is no bad emotions. They are necessity to be able to live in good emotional contact and in a good life and function in a group. So even start saying bad or good emotions is nonsense. All the emotions are a necessity. It's a language. It's a way we are talking. And if you even listen to the word emotion, it means in movement. So every emotion, every chemistry that goes together, that gives you an emotion of anger or fear or sadness or joy or disgust or shame, you know, every emotion has an impulse right away through your body. It's a movement. And I normally say, you will never be able to put your boundaries in a healthy way if you cannot be angry. And anger is the movement of stop. So that's how the body moves. And you know, if you don't believe it, then look at pack animals who live through their emotions. They are talking and regulating everything within a pack. Konrad Lorentzen described that through wolf pack. And here with my 19 dogs, it's very clear how they put their boundaries through their anger, not rage, but anger. But if we are not allowed to have anger, then we have the risk that it will accumulate into rage. And rage lies into instinct. Instinct do not have impulse control. Emotions have, if you teach your kids through the body. And now I'm going to take this off just to show that all this area in your body, all this area, all these muscles that is breathing for you, because your lungs are not breathing for you. They're holding the air, they're filling the air, but your muscle take care of open and take air in, take life in. All these muscles are emotional regulator. And what they also are, if you learn to breathe good, in fact, you can regulate your chemistry. So you can balance your chemistry through breathing. One of the things I really spent a lot of time teaching my son when he was little, because he got from anger into rage when he got overwhelmed, and as a highly functional autistic child, he got overwhelmed pretty easy, you know, and then he became destructive or self-destructive. So to teach him how not to hammer his head into the wall, but the ability to be with his anger, he was not more than 3 years where I started training breathing. And I continued trained him in breathing because from you're very small, you only use very few muscles to breathe. Then you become a little bigger, then more breathing muscle sets in. Then you become bigger, then more breathing muscles set in. So all the way from being born to being 12 years old, breathing muscles are setting in different developmental stages. And when you start having all that ability around 12 years, you can start learning how to manage your own chemistry. Just by learning how to breathe. And chemistry are emotions. But we need them. We need to be afraid. Fear is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful emotion. Not being terrified. Being terrified is an instinct. It's horrible. It makes you freeze or it makes you run away. But fear makes you move towards your target with cautious. And we need fear in life because fear drives us towards new things. I normally tell people teachers, if you do a lecture, if you sit, even when I sit with you guys here, not women guys, here, if I am not, I have to be a little afraid, because if I'm not a little afraid, I should stop my work, because fear kicks in my noradrenaline, and noradrenaline makes me wake up, makes me more sharp, makes me think faster. If I get terrified, I get an OD of adrenaline, and then I dissociate. So the point is not to avoid the emotions. The point is, how can we grow the emotion so I don't need to go to the instinct? And we use the body for that. That's not the brain. That's the body who do that. And that goes for any emotion.
And what's so powerful about that explanation is the differentiation between an emotion and an instinct. Because I think what's so commonly not clear in many terminologies is the blend of those concepts that we often think about rage as anger or terror as fear, rather than the continuum, and how I always talk about them as a bucket of chemicals that accumulate, and then you move outside your window of tolerance. And your body has different motor responses along that continuum, doesn't it? And you can, so you can see the change or the building of the motor pattern as I keep using the same strategy across time.
And we can build that container. Now I have done a lot of hostage negotiation in Syria and ex-Yugoslavia and Lebanon, and I even went to Syria to negotiate with the Islamic State. And I'm telling you, that require energy management. You know, you get a little dissociated, but you need to stay put. Because if you don't stay put, then you die. And that, how did I do that? Through my body. Using my body to be able to say, okay, it's okay to dissociate 40% here, but 60% has to stay put. And that's what the body can help you with. And that's what the body can do for you. In Bodynamic, we call it feelings. We call it all feelings, and we have layers of feelings. So, and it has different volume. Volume, you say that in English? Volume? In our body. So we have sentiments that has a very lower frequencies of releasing chemistry. Then we have emotions that has bigger waves of releasing chemistry. And then we have instinct that is like tsunamis. And the more you practice, the more you are able to stay more put within your emotions, because emotions are still in your consciousness. Instinct, you are out of consciousness. You lose it. And that's also characteristic for going into a shock. It's a dissociation for your consciousness.
Right.
And then it becomes not anger, but rage. And very often it becomes killer rage.
Right.
And if you have noticed in your part of the world, Canada, United States, a lot of the school killings were all these nice nerds that kept from themselves and was quiet. And then one day they went bananas. So I am not believing in anger management. I am believing in the ability to be in contact with each other's anger so we can avoid getting into the rage. Yeah, because we lose it there.
When I think about the body and you talk about the body as a resource, is it correct? This is one of the things I deeply want to ask you. Is it correct in my thought process that the wiring is in us to use that intuitively when we are in contact, but we lose access to that wiring, and then we have to be conscious to reconnect to it? Would that be, do you understand my thought process?
I don't know, but I will try to answer. You stop me if I'm on a highway, another highway. In Bodynamics, believe all development happens in contact. And if there is no contact, we start being really disturbed. So we grow through contact. But in this contact, there is different meetings, and some of those meetings have created different defenses because we got overwhelmed. We were not met okay. So we got too afraid, and we were not met in the fear, so we got terrified. Or we got too angry, we were not met in the anger, so we got into rage. So then we create defense systems that is trying to, in different way, avoiding being overwhelmed. But very often what happens is we get overwhelmed through our own defense system. Did I answer the question, or did I get on another road?
So yes, you did, even though you might not think you did, because you brought me back to the core concept of we develop in contact, which means, and what I know as a person who studies the brain is that we are wired for contact. So neurobiologically, the underpinnings of our entire structure is to seek connection and contact, and that our body is the facilitator of that wiring. So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I remember, it's not only the brain who have neurofeedback. All your muscles grow by neurofeedback, so they grow together. So I don't think you can separate brain and body, or body and brain. This is who you are. You are not just something up here. You are all of this, and all of this has to work in harmony and in a specific structure to keep you functional, to keep you healthy. One of the most important things to keep you healthy is connection. It's one of the most important things. And doesn't matter where you go in the world, the one thing we all have in common, we all have a body everywhere. You can go to the jungle, we all have a body. And another thing we all have in common is we all grasp the world before we understand it.
Yes.
So we have to remember that everything we later create cognitive understanding on is first grasped, is tasted, it's smelled. So we got all our information chain, all our foundation of information through our body. And we integrated it through our body. I don't think that you can separate body, mind, and spirit. It's one you.
And I mean, I love how you just spoke about the contact. I've heard you use the term territorial boundaries. This is me. Yeah. This is the world. This is, that I understand the world by knowing that where I begin and where I end. And one of the musings that we have or that I have in the number of people that I support in my life who have sensory systems that are different, is that they
Yes.
experience that this is me and this is not me very differently. That they don't
Yes.
always know where they begin and they end, or they may feel at one with their environment. And how that then impacts contact when there's that sense of overwhelm from those experiences, and how that needs to be met differently.
Yeah, and sometimes it needs slowly to train. Again, one of the things I did with my son from he was very little, and when I say I did it, it means every day, every day, every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because you want to support a child who has challenges. That's a commitment.
Yes.
And in fact, it's such a big commitment. Hattie was diagnosed as Asperger when he was 8. The last time he went to the Center of Autistic, they were like, oh my God, we can practically not see he's an autistic child, young man anymore. And he was so autistic that they wanted to give him rehabilitation, just money. And I said, well, maybe you should tell parents that there is an option here. And then they said in the center, we cannot do that. That would be too expensive for the state. But they wrote that he practical had no traits left. He still have some, and he still know he has some. But you can do it differently. So what I did with him around boundaries was he didn't have the sense of skin boundaries. And I knew that when he was very little, because he didn't want to be touched. But I touched him anyway. I gave him baby massage every day for 2 years. And he was screaming the first 6 months. And people were saying, oh, you're hurting your child. And I was saying, no, I don't. I'm hurting him in the long run if I don't do this. Because he's longing for being with us, but he cannot be with us if he's only in the whole world. He needs to be with himself first. The next thing I did was I created yarns around him. So so he visualized, could see that his energetic field was 3 times as big as his brother's. And then we trained how he could take that field into himself so he did not get overwhelmed by the whole world. So the world didn't all got into him, but he could hold the field and get out to the world. That took 6 years. 6 years every day. But he can do it now.
Well, what you're saying is it's part of your life. It was a way of being with him, not a protocol of program. It was your life. Right?
Yeah. Not only my life, it was the family's life, my mother's life, my ex-husband's life, the big brother's life, We were all engaged in this together.
Beautiful.
It's a gift. Imagine that you can walk through 3, 4 different worlds without having the fear about it, because it's the fear. You remember the movie The Beautiful Mind with the schizophrenic?
Oh, yes.
It's not the problem that someone talks to you or you hear voices. The problem is you fear of it, and nobody can meet it and say, okay, you hear voices, relate to them without fear or stop them.
Right.
Instead of saying, take a lot of medicine to make the voices disappear, but at the same time, you lose your mind. Yeah. You lose the ability to connect because you get so, pardon my French, stoned of all the medicine they give you.
Exactly.
The problem is, it's the fear. Oh.
Yeah. And when you talk about using the body, I think one of the things that I was trying to get at is babies know how to do it. We have to learn it. Right?
True. Babies will do their motoric development. Autistic kids sometimes don't do it. They become more, you know, it took me 6 months to teach Hattie to crawl. You know, he didn't want to crawl. With a sheet under and every day and movement. He didn't want to play with his toys. So that took some years for him to relate to toys. He didn't speak at all before he was 4. That took some time. And I could go on, you know, and okay, he had his heart attack at the same time and problem with that. So he had a lot on his plate. But, you know, you can just say, okay, we can support the motoric development.
Right.
We can, and you can even do it if you have an accident. Like when I broke my neck,
yes,
I have to do all the movements.
Yeah.
You know, I went down and said, okay, I'm going to do all the motoric development again. But they said I will never walk, and I'm walking.
Yes.
No. So I do believe that we can do a lot.
Yes.
No?
And I think when you talk about one thing that I know about you that I don't know that you acknowledge enough is when you talk about, you know, doing the skin for Hattie, I know how attuned you are. That you talk about, you know, imposing versus attuning. And I mean, as a watcher of you, you might have to enter in and do something that he doesn't like, but you would do it from an attuned space.
Yeah, and I would.
It's different than just do it, right?
Yes, it's not forced. It's in connection, and you recognize the child's anger in it.
See, that's a point of clarity that is important, because part of, well, one dance that we have in our field is about, you know, compliance. You're going to do it. Applied behavioral analysis. I give you a candy, you do it again. Look at me. Here you go. Look at me, right? Which is not so attuned. Or in physical therapy, there's a form of intervention called MEDEC, where I take you and I put you in an uncomfortable position and I hold you there, and I don't tune in necessarily to your state of arousal or I don't necessarily keep you in contact. If you dissociate, I don't care. I hold you in that position, right?
If you dissociate, there is no point.
Right. So I know that you know the difference, but I don't think people know the difference.
So how do you learn the difference? What is it that you see that's different? When you see your son crying and you're doing the massage, what is it that's different to somebody who's just, I've been told to do the massage, I'm just going to do it?
When I first of all, you talk, even to a baby. You meet them, you talk, you said, I know you don't like it. I'm here for you. You know, it's okay that you get angry at me now. I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to be here. I'm going to meet you, Amber. You have the right. But we're going to stay here together for a little while. Then you stop a little. Then you stop a little. Give some space. You are telling what you are doing before you do it. Even to a baby. I'm going to grab your feet now before you grab the feet.
It's the how.
And then And then you look at the child, and if it gets totally desperate, you know that they are dissociated, and then you let go. And then you reconnect again. And then you are saying, you know, we're going to do it one more time. I'm going to grab your foot. Try to stay here a little while. Oh? Maybe they can stay 2 seconds, and then they get too desperate, and then you move away. Then you give space, then you come back. Maybe you can stay 3 seconds. That's okay. That's also why I'm saying it's every day and it's patient. It's not bullying the child to a program. It's following the rhythm of the capacity of the baby. But you do not. You come back, you do not stop. So it's constantly following a rhythm in contact. And that means you need to be in contact with yourself. Because if you're not in contact with yourself, you cannot tune into anybody else. And therefore, it becomes very important to talk about what is contact? What is connection? What does that require of you? So you just don't only become the role and a treater, but you become the human being that connects to another human being in the interaction.
Mm.
And that you can't do without your own body.
Mm.
So what I often say, being a good therapist starts with connecting to yourself. And being a good therapist means that you have to sense yourself in any contact 50%. You cannot just go over to the other person, because then in a way you overwhelm anyone. So you need to stay within you and only have 50% of your contact in the other person, with the other person. Because if you lose that, you lose yourself. And then, you know, that is too overwhelming.
Mm.
I hope I good here, because this is attunement. Attunement starts with your own center, your own breathing, your own ability for sensing, your own capacity of sensing your own boundaries. Because if you want to teach someone boundaries, you need to require yourself first.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think we often are aware of that with parents. When parents want their children to behave, you sort of got to ask, well, what kind of a parent are you being first, before you worry about what kind of a child your child is being. But I don't think I've ever thought of that in terms of what kind of a therapist are you being first, before you ask your child in therapy what you're doing. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, the question that just popped up, I'm going to use this time while people are still writing questions. I'm seeing them popping up on the board, but I think there's a real tricky balance between fixing and supporting. And when you say, to a large degree, just accepting people for who they are, doesn't mean that you still were doing stuff with your son to help him be in this world functionally. So it wasn't, when you say just accept them for, like, sometimes that message gets mixed up in disability fields as well, where people say, well, just let them move however they move, in whatever body position they have. We don't need them to be normal, we just need them to move and participate. And it's that same question, is when are you fixing and when are you sort of facilitating or supporting? And it's a tricky thing to define.
I love that.
Always say, always say, we need to support the kids to be able to make choices. And if I only have one way of being, I have no choice. But that not only clients, not only autistic or other, you come into the therapy room with one behavior and one pattern. And my job is to support you in expanding your ability to make your own choices.
It's beautiful.
And what I did for my son, it's not taking anything away from him, but giving him the opportunity to make choices of being able to go in and out of different worlds. That's freedom. Freedom is not just one way. Freedom are the choice.
Yeah, I really like that. Okay, I'm going to... I have been recording this just because I knew that the conversation was going to be really interesting. So if you guys are happy for me to share when I share the recording, just to keep this bit in, because I had kind of pushed pause and then I saw this conversation is going in really interesting avenues. I don't want other people to miss out on it. So okay, I'm going to if you click on the link that I put in the chat, you'll be able to see the questions popping up as well. Ditte and Kim, if you want to have a look at them. And I'm just going to close the breakout rooms. I'm going to give people just a minute's warning.
In
you want me to?
In the chat, I don't have anything.
Oh, you don't?
No, just says no groups yet.
Oh, hang on. I'm going to put it in the... and start with the first question here in the top left. Breathing, hot topic, but how? Could you give specific examples of how you would teach breathing to a child? Where do you start and how to progress? I know it's individual, but it would be helpful to hear some ideas.
Let me show some example. If you take 2 thumbs and you put them under your armpits, then you hit a muscle that is called serratus. Serratus have 3 parts. The first part of serratus starts in existence. That means, in fact, the baby is even using it in the belly of the mother to practice breathing. So when we are born, we breathe upper costal with a lower costal breathing, but we use the serratus to breathe. The serratus muscle is also attached in the first way of reaching out. So it's a very important attachment muscle. And small babies are breathing through this muscle on sidewards, all the way up here. It's a very little breathing. And it makes a movement of broadening your chest a little. And this broadening of the chest makes at the beginning, the deep, deep beginning of the movement of reaching out. They do it through breathing and through their eyes. So you can practice with kids sitting here and just asking them, can you breathe into your thumb? Can you sense something in there? Can you move you breathing into your thumbs? Or if you have very small babies who do not do it, you can slightly softly, but like I said when you were talking before, never inviolate a child, but it's okay to provoke a child, but you have to do that by being very in tune to the rhythm of the baby or the child you are working with. If the baby gets overwhelmed, you give it a break and then you come back a little. Always tell even a baby what you do before you do it. So use your tone, talk, and do it from within yourself. If you want to connect to someone, start to connect to yourself first, because it's out of that inner connection that you go out and meet someone. I told in the break that I am teaching my students who want to be therapists that the first connection is not to your clients, it's to yourself. Because if you're not connected to yourself, how can you even relate to a client? So 50% of your energy should always be within you, connecting and awareness through your own body. So this is existence. This is the first way of breathing. Then when we get a little older, we need a little more air. Then we move to the next part of serratus and we use we go a little further down through the intercostal. So it's not only the two first rib we're breathing from, we go a little further down. And we are using the middle part in the back of a muscle called trapezius that is pulling the shoulder blades together, or it stretches the shoulder blades apart. So with inhaling, the shoulder blades goes away. With exhaling, you pull your shoulder blades together. And this you can do with kids when they are laying, because it's the movement of pushing yourself up. And the moment you push yourself up, laying down, you also start getting the sense that your boundaries expanding, because now it's not only skin to a table or skin to a bed or skin to your mom. Now you can make a movement where you make a space between you and something else. And this space is also you. And in this movement, you can breathe. You can take life in and you can exhale. When kids get older, you can play with them and teach them to breathe through a straw. But if you put now I don't have a straw here, but if you put 2 straws in the mouth, they think it's really funny. And you bite on them and you hold your nose and you only breathe through the straw, you will force the first impulse of breathing through the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a very important muscle for holding the power of your emotion. The diaphragm also massages the heart. And when it does that, it activates the vagus nerve. So in a way, it sets a whole chain reaction of chemistry in your body. It's a fantastic regulator of even panic attack or overwhelming, in a way of finding back to yourself. A lot of people who have panic attack has a tendency to breathe too much with the belly or too much upwards and too little with the diaphragm. It's also amazing if you scuba dive. If you can really breathe through your diaphragm, you can be half an hour longer underwater on 1 bottle of oxygen. And you have all the air you need. So this was a couple of examples.
Thank you.
And of course, with kids, play with it. Yeah.
Ditte, can you mentioned it briefly, but can you talk a bit more about the balance between forcing sensory input to a child and having the child give permission? Could you just talk a little bit more about that?
Well, it's not about, if you have an autistic kid, they will not give you permission. But it's about you tuning into, I'm going to grab your foot now, I'm going to hold your foot. I'm here, and when the child starts getting angry, then you meet the anger and say, it's okay that you are angry. And I'm staying here with you with the anger. If the child moves from anger to desperate, and you can hear that, you let go, you give them space. But you come back again. Then they calm down, you come back again. Yeah? But you have to be within you have to be connected, and you have to be able to handle that they get angry at you, and that you can be with that anger. Right? Without you getting overwhelmed by your own anger or fear, or, oh, we have to do this because this is good for you. If you have to be there with your emotions in a frequencies where you are grounded and you are centered, and you can meet them and you can follow a rhythm of, now I'm angry that you are touching me, Yeah, but I'm staying with the anger and the touch. Now I get overwhelmed that you are touching me. Now I'm moving back and I'll give you space. So you have to be tuned in. And you know, it doesn't matter if it's autistic kids or if it's highly traumatized veterans, something I worked a lot with, soldiers all over the world. I even created a trauma program that is implemented now in 6 cities in Ukraine during the war there. It doesn't matter if it's wounded adult or if it's wounded children, you have to be in tune because you have to balance between connection, contact, consciousness, and not driving people in a dissociation. And that's require attunement of being there and being able to go back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So I think you've spoken a little bit then about the next question, which is how do we meet instinctual emotions, rage, for example, in children to help them work through them, particularly when they are aggressive or unsafe towards us?
You cannot meet, you can never meet instinct. You can bring them back to an emotion. So when people are going into an instinct, your job is to bring them back, calm the system enough so the instinct become an emotion. And we have to be aware, never go for battle mind, calm mind, because then you risk at the issue.
Sorry,
You
did
have
your microphone is losing some of the volume. I'm only hearing a few words. Could you say that again?
You never take a person, any person, for battle mind to calm mind right away. So you take a person from an instinct slowly into an emotion and land them through the emotions. That's also what happened in the limbic system. Huh? So you know, you cannot meet a crocodile.
Yeah.
But you can, in some way, you can make the crocodile land into being a more pack animal. So, and you can only do that if you can acknowledge and stay with the emotion of the child. Protect when these children, of course, you have to hold or protect them against hurting themselves or others. But at the same time, the best way is slowly making the rage into anger. And one of the ways is to allow, one very powerful way, if a child is in rage, give them a tower and let them strangle the tower. I hate you, I want to kill you. Let them kill you through this, no? Because if they start doing this movement, there will happen an activation in brain that will make them land more into the emotions. So don't be afraid of the kids' anger. If you want to land rage, you have to allow them to be angry. And you have to help them in a constructive anger and not just, oh, you have to be calm, you cannot behave this way. No?
Kim, you were doing the twirl. What were you thinking when Ditte was showing that?
Well, I mean, what's so important there is there's no way you can take somebody who is in an instinct and ask them to regulate themselves and they will comply. Our biggest misunderstanding is that there is control there in instinct. And what our role is as co-regulators is to create enough containment, safety, groundedness, so that the person lands back into a space where they can meet you. And this is what we speak about all the time. So different than a behavior management plan.
Christine has just made a comment here. True, reptiles can't rotate, so rotation can help bring the child up to the mammalian brain. That's a nice way to think about it. That's awesome. Thank you, Christine. Okay, so I'm just going to ask one last question then. How does a body dynamic approach fit in the support or treatment of a child with a complex body or significant neuromotor involvement, considering movement and sensory characteristics? So children who aren't able to move their body to grasp the world. I'm translating that.
That was a big question.
So
That was highly.
kids with cerebral palsy. Kids with cerebral
For
palsy.
me?
Yeah.
Huh?
I said
Yeah.
kids with cerebral palsy who may not be able to move their bodies. That's what's in that question. How does Bodynamic support kids who can't move the way that we'd like them to?
We go backwards. Like I told you in the break, I was so unfortunately to break my neck as one of the accidents I had in my life. And I ended up in a wheelchair, and they said, "You're probably not going to walk again." And I said, "Probably not, but I'm going to give it a chance." So I'm going to show you something. Just by so if you, there is this movement, there is this movement, there is this movement. Now I do different states of movement just with my finger. So I was not able to do this movement. I was not able to do this movement. I was not able to do this movement. I was able to do this movement. You go back in time. What I did with myself is I started all over. I became an infant and I started working my body. Okay, it took me 2 years, but I worked my body from an infant up to a grown-up woman one more time. So you back off and you find a place where there is a movement. And there you can go through 8 stages and you go like, if I could not supinare and pronare. Okay, so what comes before supinare and pronare? A little baby in needs who are 3-4 months cannot make this movement, but what can this baby make? So you simply create a training, way of training and moving backwards to go upwards again. And that is very good to do in water.
Mm.
Kim, can I ask you to overlay that answer with current kind of concepts in neurodisability rehabilitation?
I'm not sure I'm specifically understanding your question, but I think what you're saying is, you know, we now, I think what you're asking me is we used to believe that, you know, developmental processes were a hierarchy, but that now, is that what you're asking? But
Yeah.
now we don't think that way?
Well, now we don't think that way, and there's a very strong emphasis on the task-specific training.
Right. But I think that what Ditte is saying is finding the point of entry into the person's system and building from there. And then you put it back into function for sure. And there is a difference, of course, between tapping into what you've lost as an adult. You've lost a skill that's still in you. And with a child, you may not have ever found that within you yet. But I think what you're trying to do is help the person find themselves in themselves. So I like the idea of where do you begin, which is different than a regimented hierarchical repetition of a position, which is not what I think Bodynamics is saying. It's more, what muscles does the child have access to in their foundation, and where do I help them find their strengths.
Yeah. Follow the body, the ability of the body.
I think Mrs. Bobath would say the biggest challenge with that question, Mindy, is its semantics.
Right.
Talking about words, not concepts. And people get hung up on the language versus the attunement piece of what we see in a person's body.
Thank you. Okay, so that has been amazing. I am going to leave everybody with the questions up. If Kim or Ditte want to expand on any of those questions, and just email me the answers, I can share that with the group. But you've been so generous with your time and your thoughts and your knowledge. I really want to thank you and appreciate it so much, Ditte. It's been fantastic delving into your world a little bit and really understanding things from a completely different viewpoint, but seeing how it all comes together. And I just love that whole concept of the balance between connection and individual autonomy. So that's really something I'm going to take away from this. Thank you everybody for joining us, and I'm going to end the meeting there. And like not very happily, because I would love to just keep going with it. I'm enjoying it so much, but everybody has to get on with their morning, evening, or afternoon. So thank you all for joining us, and the recording will be up for those of you who want to watch it again, or for those who couldn't stay for the whole thing. So thank you, Kim. Thank you, Ditte. I appreciate your time and your knowledge. Have a lovely morning, evening, or afternoon, everybody, wherever you are in the world.
Thank you. And please check out bodynamic.com.